In this lesson 6, we are going to investigate conditionals. So your prompt for your warm-up is, a water park will let a visitor on a ride if they are 48 or more inches tall, or if they are 14 years old or older. So in your journal, you're going to make a flowchart for this decision. Make sure to use the comparison operators, greater than, equal than, double equal to, etc. And logical operators, which are the double and then the or, and then the not, which is the exclamation point, when you write your Boolean expression. So pause the video here so that you have time to do that. In everyday conversation, it is common to switch between using the words when and if. And here are some examples of what this looks like. When the user clicks the button, if the user clicks the button, when the user has more than 100 points, if the user has more than 100 points. Well, today in this lesson, we want to be careful about how we use these words. To make things simple, we're going to use the following rules. When means there is an on event to respond to user input. The app does something when the user clicks. If means there is a conditional statement that decides what pieces of code to run. The app does something if a Boolean expression evaluates to true. And we'll talk more about this later, but for now, keep an eye out for the difference between when and if. So for level 1 on code.org, you're not going to be able to work in pairs because you're doing this for homework at home, but I want you to predict what will happen with level 1. So pause the video here so you can go to code.org and make your prediction.
Our daily lives are filled with decisions, big and small. Even simple choices like what to wear usually are the result of complex considerations. What's the weather going to be like? What will you be doing today? Do you feel like making an impression or keeping it casual? But the world around us is constantly changing, so we want to adapt the choices we make to match the changing conditions. What's true for humans is also true for computer programs. We don't want our programs to always run in the same way. They should respond to changing conditions. In the last video, we learned how to use Boolean expressions to establish whether something is true or false. We can now add something called a conditional statement to help guide the computer's decisions based on that information. The simplest conditional statement is an if statement. It says that if something is true, the computer should run a specific block of code. Let's say that you want to create a program that displays whether or not you are old enough to see a PG-13 movie. So the question we want the computer to evaluate is, if age is greater than or equal to 13. The question, or Boolean expression, goes next to the if. The block of code we want to run, only if the condition is true, goes inside the if statement. So in our example, whenever the expression age greater than or equal to 13 is true, the program will write to the screen that you are old enough to see a PG-13 movie.
So let's investigate our first app. You're going to go to this level and play this game at least once. And then you're going to choose one of these sections, lines 1 through 13, 16 through 30, or 33 through 53. Read the code in your section carefully, making sure you understand how each line works. Then in your journal, you're going to explain what your section does, call out any lines of code you thought were interesting or confusing, and then you're going to ask good questions about how this section works. Nope, false. You're not doing this part, okay? This part you're not doing. But you will do the first two in your journal. Right now, the game keeps going when the player has 0 lives. Your goal is to fix that problem, and in your journal, I want you to tell me how you fix the problem. Okay? So pause the video here so that you can do that.
Of course, some people will not be old enough. In these kinds of situations, we will want our programs to do something else when the condition is false. In order to do this, we will want to expand our if statements to include an else statement. The commands contained in this else statement only run if the Boolean condition in the if statement is false. In AppLab, you can add an else statement by either dragging out the if-else block or by clicking the plus symbol in the bottom right corner of the if block.
All right, so let's move on to part 2. Look at lines 53 through 59 and write in your journal how the mod operator works. This is the mod operator. It's the percent sign. So it says in the comments, the mod operator divides two numbers and returns the remainder. Okay? Now, the AP exam will have questions about how the mod operator works. So you're going to want to add that to your journal because it is important for you to know how it works. And these explanations that you get from these comments are enough. It's not expecting you to use the mod operator in your create task, but it is expecting you to know like what it is and how it works. So the mod operator is just like any other operator. It takes two numbers, processes them, and then returns a value. All right, so when you add and subtract 3 and 2, you get 5 and 1. When you multiply 3 and 2, you get 6. When you divide 3 and 2, you get 1.5. When you use the mod operator for 3 and 2, you get 1. Mod is the remainder that is left after a number is divided by another number. All right, so let's practice. What is 17 mod 5? Write this answer in your journal. What you need to remember is that it's the remainder that is left after a number is divided by another number. So let's divide 17 by 5. What is left over? We get 3 first, and then say 17 minus 15, and then we get 2. So the remainder is 2. And 2 is the answer. So 17 mod 5 equals 2. Why is this useful? A common usage is to determine if a number is even or odd. If you divide any number by 2 and there is no remainder, the number is even. You can also use mod to determine if a number is divisible by another number. Now let's get back to another app investigation and with functions and parameters and with functions with parameters and return values. Go to level 3 and complete that, and then we're going to watch this video. So pause the video here so you can go complete level 3.
Sometimes the decisions you will want your program to make have more than 2 possible outcomes. Let's continue our movie rating example, where we want to check whether the highest rating you can go see alone is an R-rated movie, a PG-13 movie, or just a G-rated movie. To check between these 3 different cases, we can add an else if statement. An else if statement is another condition that a program checks only if the previous if statements were false. So if age is greater than or equal to 17, write that user can see an R-rated movie alone. Else if the age is greater than or equal to 13, write that the user can see a PG-13 movie alone. Else, write that the user can see a G-rated movie alone. The else condition becomes the default condition, because when all the previous if and else if statements are false, it will default to the else statement. Be careful as you construct longer sequences of else if statements. If you mix up the order, you might not get the behavior you intended. In our example, imagine we had switched the code so that the first condition checked if the user was old enough to see PG-13 movies, like this. This would mean that everyone who is 13 or older would be told they can only see PG-13 movies, even the adults. And with the next else if line, the computer would be looking for people 17 or older in the remaining group. This code misses the adults because they were true in that first condition. This won't work. The computer checks the conditions from top to bottom, so it is important to enter the most specific condition first.
So let's look at level 4. I want you to play this game at least once, and then I want you to write in your journal how the game plays differently now, because this is a more advanced version of the app. Find the if-else-if command, okay? And then in your journal, I want you to draw a flow chart for the if-else-if command in your journal. After you do that, modify the program to make the lemon even smaller when the player has more than 15 points. And in your journal, I want you to tell me how you did that. So pause the video here so that you can complete level 4.
You can add even more complexity to your conditional statements by asking 2 questions at the same time. We use the and or operators to check 2 Boolean expressions at once. Let's talk about or first. If we wanted to, for example, express that you can be younger than 5 years old or older than 95 years old to get free admission to a museum, we could express that like this. Expressions that use the OR operator are true if either the first or the second expression is true. Only when both expressions are false does the ORed expression evaluate to false. The AND operator is more strict. What if we wanted to say that to get the student pricing at the museum, you need to be between 12 and 21 years old? We could express that as checking whether age is greater than 12 and age is less than 21. If only one of these conditions is true, that's not good enough. Both conditions must be true to get the student discount. More and more complex questions can be represented with combinations of and or statements. What if the museum gives the student pricing to everyone, if it's Tuesday or Thursday? But on every other day, you still need to be between the ages of 12 and 21 to get a discount. We could express that like this. If the day is Tuesday, or the day is Thursday, or your age is greater than 12 and age is less than 21, then you get the student pricing. Else, you get regular pricing. When using text, use parentheses to group Boolean expressions together. When evaluating this complex conditional, the computer will evaluate each Boolean expression separately, and then use the rules of and or to determine if the whole expression is true or false. So if the day is Monday and the user is 25, the code would run like this. First, the computer checks if the day is Tuesday. It's not, so that is false. Then the computer checks if the day is Thursday. It's also not, so that is false as well. Since it's not Tuesday or Thursday, and at least one side must be true for an or statement to evaluate to true, that whole expression evaluates to false. Then the computer checks the other side of the or, since that could be true. The computer checks if the age is greater than 12. 25 is greater than 12, so that statement is true. Now the computer checks if the age is less than 21. 25 is not less than 21, so that statement is false. Since this was an and statement, but only one side was true, this whole expression evaluates to false, and the message displays that the user gets regular pricing. For a human, perhaps this answer was obvious from the beginning, because we are actually pretty good at dealing with logic statements when they represent real-life decision-making. But the computer needs to evaluate every expression until it can determine whether the condition is true or false. Many beginner programmers make a mistake while trying to write this expression. Is the day Tuesday or Thursday? Notice the subtle difference between the correct code and this version. This is often the result of the fact that in English we would say, is the day Tuesday or Thursday? However, remember that computer questions are different, so we have to ask, is the day equal to Tuesday or is the day equal to Thursday?
And that's very
so
important.
that the computer will understand. Computers do exactly what we program them to do, but with conditionals, we can simulate complex decision-making and have the computer adapt to changes, or even seem intelligent to humans.
So for part 4, okay, play the game at least once, write in your journal what has changed since the last time that you played the game and how it works. Find the if-else-if statement that was added. Draw a flowchart for it in your journal. And then after you're done with that, you modify the app to add one more username and password. You'll need to edit both the code and user interface. Warning, use a fake password, people. Don't use your real passwords, okay? It's never a good idea to use real passwords directly in your code like this, all right? So pause the video here so that way you have the opportunity to finish this. After completing part 4, there's an opportunity in your journal to practice a written response for the create performance task portion, okay? Examine a selection statement, conditional, used in the Lemon Squeeze app. Describe one result or side effect if a particular condition in that selection statement was changed. Answer that question in your journal based on this code. Pause the video here so you can do that. All right, let's do our closing journal. What is the difference between an if statement, an if-else statement, and an if-else-if statement? How are they similar? If you wanted, you could use a Venn diagram. If you want to just use sentences, you can do that. So go ahead and pause the video here so you can answer this prompt in your journal. All right. This is how you would check multiple conditions with the if-else if. So if the temperature is greater than 100, the console log is going to say it's dangerously hot. Else, if the temperature is greater than 90, it's going to print it's very hot. Else, if the temperature is greater than 80, it's going to print it's hot. Else, if the temperature is greater than 70, it's going to print it's warm. And anything below 70 or below, it's going to say it's cool. All right. So what I've learned is start with the biggest number and then work your way down. All right. So the most general, because anything 69, 70 and 69 and below, that's a lot less numbers than 0 to 100. So you're going to start with your most, like with your largest group, and then you're going to get more and more specific or more and more smaller. All right, so let's add conditional statement and logical operator to your vocab catcher. And don't forget to complete level 7, which is the check for understanding, and also submit a picture of everything that you wrote in your journal, because remember, you'll also be using your journal for the test. So keep that in mind and let me know if you have any questions.